It is my pleasure to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in this workshop was hosted by the Urantia Association Education Committee. I want to share with you a quick protocol. During the meeting, we ask you, please mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid disturbing background noises. If you want to speak, please raise your hand and unmute yourself. Please use the chat only for webinar-related questions. Use headphones if you can to improve sound quality and to reduce echo background noises when speaking. Please do not type when your microphone is not muted. The session will be recorded for future study purpose use. The videos will be made available to the public in the Urantia Association YouTube channel. Turn off your camera if you do not like your image being used for records, and ask to speak off the record at any time when you do not want your say to be part of the videotape. This way, your part will be cut out of the video during editing. Today, we have the participation of Cheryl Glicker, who will present the theme on gifts and giving. Now, let me introduce you, Cheryl, briefly. In 1997, Cheryl received the Urantia book as a birthday gift from her husband, who had no idea what it was, nor what a life-changing experience it was to be. Since that time, she has been an active reader, Urantia book internet school student, study group host, member of the Greater Lake Michigan Urantia Association, and enthusiastic conference and retreat attendee. In 2010, she also participated in the Urantia Book Internet School Facilitator Training Program. Cheryl and her husband, Alan, live in rural Milford, Michigan, and have 2 married daughters and a 4-year-old granddaughter. Thank you, dear Cheryl, for your willingness to serve. The session is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannie, and welcome everyone, and thank you for giving me your time today. I did not know what I could contribute to a workshop when I was first asked to present one. And so I thought about it, and I meditated about it, and I stewed about it, and I argued with my husband about it, until it came to me that all of this that was going on would not ever have been going on had he not been the one to give me a gift. And the more I thought about things being gifts, I realized that all of us on this planet have received this gift of revelation from the Revelatory Commission. And just that thought was enough to send me on a journey of figuring out what else I could talk about when it came to gifts and giving. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit at first about different kinds of gifts. First, of course, we had the gift of the book, and during the process of the giving of the revelation, there was the participation of Dr. Sadler and their assistants, all of the people they invited to be members of the forum who gave their time and their thought and their attention and their opinions and their questions. And all of these things were involved in the compilation, the publication, and eventually the dissemination of the book. Jeannie mentioned in her introduction that my husband gave me this book for my 45th birthday. And when she said he didn't know what it was, that is absolutely true. He did not have a clue. But he's a very sensitive individual, and he pays attention to inspiration that comes to him. And so on the day of my birthday, he was about to go to his friend who owns a jewelry store and buy me some piece of jewelry, which is what he likes to do for my birthday. But while he was getting in the car after work to go do that, he had an inspiration that, no, that wasn't what I needed for my birthday. He needed to go buy me a book. And he actually saw this book in his mind, and some sort of inspiration told him to go to this particular metaphysical bookstore and buy the book. So he did that. And to make a long story short, he gave it to me for my birthday, never knowing what it was. Didn't look at it, didn't open it to read it before he bought it, asked the people to wrap it up. And so when I opened it, and I see this one word on the cover that I have no idea what it is, and there's no author, I really was quite bewildered. And the more I looked inside it, the more bewildered I became. And so it was a while before I realized just what a tremendous gift I had in my hands. But when I did that, the emotional response took over my whole body. And I don't know if I had an epiphany or if I had the kind of thing that Paul had on the road to Damascus, I don't know. But when she said it created a life-changing experience, I think we've all experienced that with the Urantia book. And so to me, it is quite seriously the most wonderful gift I have ever received. With that, with the receipt of the book itself, I received more gifts. I received the gift of greater knowledge, greater clarity of knowledge, greater understanding of the knowledge. And at the end of all of that was this tremendous uplifting of hope to know that we weren't all doomed here, that we weren't lost and forgotten and just plain doomed. And that was another revelation right there. So that's the sort of gifts I received along with this big heavy blue book. And then I thought more, well, what other kinds of gifts do we experience because we are human beings, because we live on this planet at this time and part of this enormous cosmos. And I realized that one of the other gifts we received was all of the mortals on all of the spheres. What we received is the Father's gift of the Creator sons. He gives his sons so that they will make universes and they will have inhabitable planets so that mortals like us can participate in the whole wonderful plan. And that's a gift. That's not an accident. It's not an afterthought. It's a gift. And I wish everybody realized that that was a gift. Maybe that's our job, to make everybody realize that it's a gift. And then you think about it a little bit more and you realize that we have the power to choose what we're going to do, how we're going to behave. And that's the gift of free will. And that comes from the Father. That comes directly from the Father. And that's a double-edged sword, that gift of free will, in my humble opinion. Because the very fact that you can choose means that there is a right way and a wrong way. And there's always that pitfall. And it's always a challenge. And I always know when I'm getting pushed by my thought adjuster because it's always telling me to choose to do the thing I don't really want to do. So that's another gift. But I think that most of the mortals, at least on this planet, I don't think they recognize that free will as a gift. I think most people might consider that an inalienable right. And, there's maybe on the one hand, maybe so, but in a spiritual sense, no, that's not a right. That's a gift. And it comes with a responsibility and a duty. And so there's lots of facets to gifts, lots of levels to gifts. in my opinion. So what does it mean, this gift of free will? You know, I think that it's absolutely necessary to have it, because without that possibility of choosing the wrong thing instead of the right thing, we couldn't possibly make those tough decisions that cause the soul growth, that cause our souls to become what they need to be in order to keep on going, to make it into the next level, to be of value in the rest of the cosmos. And so to use that gift of free will choice, the Father in his infinite wisdom has sent a piece of himself to be that very thought adjuster, to help, because he knows it's tough and we need some help. So there's another gift, your thought adjuster. And what happens when you do choose to do that thing you don't really want to do, just because it's the Father's will and you know it? If you keep on doing that, something interesting happens. Jeannie was helping me put together my outline, and I had neglected to include these things until Jeannie offered it, and she mentioned to me the fruits of the Spirit. And I was so grateful for that suggestion, because the love, the joy, the peace, and the relief that you feel when, oh yeah, that was the right decision. That was the good thing to do. You can put that up on the credit side of the ledger. So, and I am so very lucky, because when I read this list of the fruits of the Spirit, because I went back to my Urantia book and I searched it, I wanted to get them all. And they are, in case you forgot, which I'm sure you haven't, they are love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, something I need, and temperance. And when I read all those things, I started to cry. Because the person who gave me this gift embodies all of these things. He is all of these things, and he treats everyone using these things and being these things and living them. And I ask myself, as I have asked myself many, many times over, what did I ever do to deserve this in my life? And I still don't know. Maybe when I get to the mansion worlds, they can tell me, or maybe I'll figure it out. But today I don't know. And so moving on, I come to our Creator's Son, Michael of Nebadon. And I'm asking myself, what are the gifts we receive from our Creator's Son? Well, one of the gifts is the gift of the planet itself, a place to live, a place to be born and live and learn and grow, and that's a gift. But then we come to my favorite two people in the whole book, and that's Adam and Eve, the biologic uplifters. And that's like my favorite part of the whole Urantia book, is the story of these two beings who came with such a mission and such a hope and such good intentions. And I hope and I pray that we're moving along enough so that they don't feel quite so bad as they must have felt in the very beginning. So there's one of the gifts of the Creator's Son is our Adam and our Eve. And then comes almost the greatest gift that a Creator's Son can bestow upon an individual world in his own universe. When he decides for his seventh bestowal, his physical incarnation, that he's going to come here to the least of the least. One of my Urantia book reader friends, actually, he's my mentor, the first study group host I ever experienced. And the very first time I went to his study group, and He referred to our planet as the armpit of the universe. And that our very own creator should choose to come here to live his physical incarnation is such a gift, such a blessing. I don't even think we know, or we will know until we move along further, how great a gift that was. And then I'm thinking more, what else did he do? As if that wasn't enough. But before he left, he gave another gift. He bestowed the spirit of truth upon us to work in conjunction with our thought adjusters and with our guardian angels, and to help us recognize the spirit of truth wherever we may find it, however it may speak to us. And that is going to help ensure our eternal survival. And again, where we are, such as we are, I don't know if we can really appreciate what that means. I hope so. So that's what I have to say about gifts. But then there's this thing of giving. That's a whole different thing. Receiving a gift is one thing, but the giving of a gift, that's totally different. And the phrase, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And I don't think any of us have not given something to someone in our lives. And I don't think any of us have failed to recognize why, just why, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And that's very difficult to articulate, what you get out of giving something to someone else. That's a very personal experience. So I hesitate to say what that means. I think I'd pretty much rather ask what that means. And then there's all kinds of different gifts too. Birthday gifts, like the birthday gift my husband gave to me. And there's the gift you take when you're invited to someone's house for dinner. There's a hostess gift, saying thank you to the hostess for inviting me to your home. That's just a thank you. And then, of course, the way we Americans celebrate Christmas, it's all about gifts. And in conjunction with Christmas, I wanted to teach my children when they were very small that this funny fat man with the long white beard in the red fuzzy suit wasn't really what Christmas was. He was a symbol, and there wasn't only one of that Santa Claus, because they would see many Santa Clauses everywhere and they would be confused. And so what I taught them, what I hope I taught them, and what I hope they will teach their children, is that this funny man in the red suit, at least here in America, he's a symbol of the spirit of giving. The spirit that moves people to give something to someone else, at least at that particular time of the year. And there's another example I thought about. When it came to the Urantia book, I think all of us have experienced a desire to give this wonderful truth, this fantastic revelation, to everyone we know, or at least to a few of the people we know who we think might be receptive to this out-of-the-box book full of ideas that are so different. Yeah, so I attempted to do that. I attempted to give knowledge, clarity, understanding, above all, hope. And so I learned a lot from that experience. And I'd like to learn from you what you might have learned from a similar experience. So I think I'd like to pause right now and ask if anyone has any feedback, response to what I have been talking about up to now. So please. If there are questions, if there are comments, please unmute yourselves and let me know.
Hello.
Hello, James.
Hi, how are you?
A little nervous. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you so much. Yeah, that subject of gift and giving is very important. I think that, like I said, it has a lot become associated with a lot of commercialism, especially on Christmas. It shows gift, and I think that this material giving has become, associated with religion itself. So that when they pray, they're really doing it sort of like a selfish manner. And, you hear this all the time. To give something, you get 10% back, 100% back, 1,000-fold back, 1,000-fold back by giving. Usually they're thinking about something material, but I don't think that's really what it's really all about. I know we're material beings, but this gift of giving where God is involved is spiritual. I think that's often overlooked.
And I think you're absolutely right. That's in my next section is when we think about it being more blessed to give than to receive, then the question is, when you give any type of giving, what is the blessing? What do you experience upon the bestowal of the gift? What's the blessing behind it? And that's what I think about when I prepare to give a gift to someone. And sometimes that backfires on me, because then sometimes I have expectations as to what the response is going to be. And then all of a sudden I'm expecting something back from that gift. And I have to check myself and just decide that it doesn't matter what does or doesn't happen or what I expect to happen. It's just my privilege to give whatever it is I'm giving.
Yeah, that's, I used to struggle with that also, trying to understand the concept of because we're told, especially the section of Rhode Island talks about unleashing the spiritual force within us to go out and bless others in transit. And I used to struggle with it and I started trying to figure out just what am I giving? What am I getting, rather? Giving. What's the blessing, as you said?
Mm-hmm.
I finally came to realize that I was thinking about the Godhead, how the Father shares his personal self with the eternal Son, and how they both share themselves with the Spirit. And through a very number of different kind of ways and byways and things like, I came to really understand that God is always outward. So that when you give something, the blessing is that you get to realize the experience of God itself. So when you give something, you really experience these spiritual values. So when you give something, of course, we're material beings, and so that no matter what we give, if we give with the right motive, is that we want to try to help someone else or to bless someone else, and that allows the divine spirit to flow through us, and whatever particular value that we're given, and we also become recipients of that value. It's not like that saying you can't really give joy to someone without giving joy yourself. And it's sort of like that is that once we give love, for example, which is really the highest spiritual value that there is, and when we give love, we receive love. That's the blessing. But until we come to recognize the value of spiritual values, that will just pass by because we look for something else. It doesn't really matter whether they respond or not. That's not the point behind it. The point behind it is to be sure that you allow the Spirit of the Father to flow through you outward. And as time goes on, this love may really be a seed that's being planted within the individual. And somewhere down the way, maybe you're the one who's softening them up. And then they go to another place, somebody else softens them up a little bit more. Pretty soon, they have an experience in life where they realize they really do need God in their life, and then they're going to look back and recognize that this was the person that planted this seed, and now I really understand what she was really saying to me and what she really did. I understand the value of what she did, because now I'm also now God conscious. and I can begin to give and also receive that blessing. The other thing is that if we just depend upon receiving, and that means the reception of the spiritual values is dependent upon someone else. We can always love whenever we want to. And we're not dependent upon another person so that we can actually experience God. Because, I mean, God is there all the way, but we experiential creatures. So if we're going to experience him, we got to allow his nature to flow through us. And when we allow that nature to flow through us, then we actually experience these spiritual values. So it took me a long time to put that together. But now I understand that if you really do get joy, now that you understand that whenever you share a spiritual value with someone, love, patience, acceptance, grace, mercy, whenever you share those things with someone, you also receive it yourself. And that becomes a blessing. I think that's very, very, very important.
Yeah, well, I think you just took care of the whole rest of my talk there, James.
Didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. I'll do it anyway. But yeah, you are absolutely right. Absolutely right. Anybody else have anything more to add? Or
I want to share one more thing with you. Sometimes when I was 14 years old, my mother died. I think there was something like 6 children left behind under the age of 18, and I think the youngest one was 5 or 6. And of course, my mother had been a member of the church. And we went to Sunday school, like we were taught to go to Sunday school. And the thing that happened was that once that happened, it seemed like the church just forgot all about us, just left us to fend by ourselves. And so I grew up, very, very bitter about that experience, and also began to associate the church with God. The church was supposed to be revelation of God. And it took me something like 20-some years before I really understood that was not the case. I remember that I had really tried to live a life without God. I had really just almost sent to some unbelievable low levels. And I finally realized that I was really up in bad shape, that I was lost. I had an aunt who, she's going on to the mansion right now, bless her soul. And I was talking to her. I was living sort of like maybe 300 yards away from where she lived. And I had got very, very depressed, very, very depressed. I was very, very bitter and angry and just a very sad person. And she would ask me to come over for dinner after I got off work because she realized what was going on with me. And in the course of going in conversation, talking with her, the subject came up about God, about going to church. And she said to me, well, James says, why don't you go to church? I think that maybe something he said or happened there that will help you. And of course I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's not going to help me. And I said, they don't understand about things. They're not helping about it. And she told me, she says, well, God is love. I said, well, I've heard a lot of people tell me they love me, but they don't. And she says, well, then she explained it to me. She said, James, God is like this. It's like a precious little egg you have in your hand. You don't want to break. You handle it with gentle care and tenderness, and you make sure that nothing happens to it. She said, that's love. And that's when I realized the difference. That was the love that she was showing me. She was actually showing me the Father by her countless acts of kindness and sympathy and acceptance. And it really made a difference in my life because at that point, I discovered that I had a big blue book that I had had for several years. I had not read it, but I kept it with me. And so I began this new concept of trying to go back to God and try to find out what he was really all about. I didn't really want to make the same mistakes that I made as a child, mixing up the church, which is a corporate organization, with actually living relationship. I was really an unfinished record, a record that was not really, it's missing, huge parts was missing, like the childhood of Jesus, what he did up to that time, and his ministry. I began to realize that. Then I checked again I realized there was a story about the life of Jesus in this big blue book that I had. So I went back and began to read it, and I couldn't put it down after that. And then I began to really realize what this love is all about, the God's love, and I realized that the Christian church, for the most part, has kind of gotten away from that. You know, you can't really find comfort in a lot of these places because they're about something else. They're not about the relationship between the individual and God. So it became a revelation for me. And like you said, I had this burning desire that everybody ought to have this book. They were hundreds of books, very, very little reciprocal reception from it. And it took me a while before I realized that everybody's not really ready for that revelation. And that was sort of like a sad realization, but it's a true one. And so I began to become more circumspect and giving out the Urantia book because I didn't want to turn people off. Didn't want preachers preaching against the book from the pulpit to become a lot bit more discreet and a little bit more wise and seeking whether or not a person really ready for Holy Truths. And the first person I tried it out on was my wife. I began to drop these little hints from the book on her, these little nuggets. She finally asked me, well, where are you getting this from? So I got this book here. Why don't you read it? And she became a reader also. So that was just in a nutshell what I was transit.
James, I think you accidentally muted yourself there. We lost that last piece.
I said that was a little summary of my transit from darkness to light.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I called myself an atheist for many, many, many years. You're muted again, James.
What happened to cause you to make that transfer?
From atheism to believer. Well, the gift of the book, actually, no, I shouldn't say that because I wanted to believe. I wanted for many years to find something that made enough sense to me that I could believe it. I was born to Jewish parents, raised as a Jew, educated in Sabbath school. Then I married a Catholic in my first marriage and agreed to raise our two daughters in the Catholic religion. So I spent many years going to Mass and actually listened to what was being preached from the pulpit at Mass. And I found a lot of truth being preached at that pulpit. And I realized during those times when I was sitting in Mass and everybody else was either sleeping or pretending to listen to the sermon, I realized that this person that we call Jesus had such an impact on our world that there had to be something to it. It couldn't just be a fake, a story. I knew there had to be something to it. And what grabbed me more than anything else at that time was the fact that he was Jewish. And I thought, okay, there's got to be something here. Yeah, he was Jewish, but he didn't get along with the Jews back then, and he was talking about things that they didn't agree with. But he had such a global impact. He could not have been just an ordinary human being. There had to be more to it than that. And at that time, I was in my 30s. I decided that in addition to being a human being, he had to be also some sort of extraterrestrial. So that's what I decided at that time in order to help me believe in something. And 15 years later, my husband hands me this gift that turns out to validate most of what I had come to on my own. And I was so happy when I came to those things and I would say, yes, I knew it. It had to be. So that's what caused the major transition for me, to answer your question. David, I believe you had a comment?
Yeah. Uh, I don't know how many times I've read the Urantia book cover to cover, but a couple of years ago I decided, I'm going to start over at the beginning, because I've probably read it all the way through 20 times, or including jumping around, right? I found myself reading paragraph over and over again, sentences over and over again. I wasn't going to gloss over anything again, okay? I mean, there's so much to take in. You almost have to gloss over it a little bit in the beginning, because every concept is just outside the realm of anything you've ever heard before. It puts everything into context. One of the things I realized here in the past year, and this all relates to gift. I don't want to get academic about it, because it does come back to gift. But it was a realization. I realized we had something really special with the Urantia book, but it really hit home just what we're being told. And it hit home because when you look at what's happened through the previous epochal revelations, they only revealed God to Jerusalem, and then to Urantia, and almost nothing has been taught beyond Urantia until the days of Melchizedek. And he only taught beyond Urantia to a small group of his followers. But beyond that, that was it. That was God. That was paradise. We've gone from Urantia to Salvington to Uversa, the headquarters of this super universe of our galaxy. We've gone beyond that to Havana, to paradise. I mean, something's going on here. Why all of a sudden have we skipped over all these stages? We've got the whole thing now. And then you read on and you find out that they kind of apologize for some of the science things that they talk about, how it'll be due for revisions. But yet the spiritual truth in it will go on for age after age. And I'm thinking, this really is such an incredible gift. We've got just about the whole thing now. They tell us over and over again, too, that they're not telling us everything, which I think they've given us enough to work on right now. But yeah, what a tremendous gift. It gives us, even the Supreme Being, they even went in, and now that was when getting in there and reading sentence after sentence after sentence, making sense sequentially, putting the whole thing together. It's just astounding. It's just astounding what they've given us. They point to one of the greatest things that we've ever come across, aside from the Urantia book, is the Hubble Space Telescope. You look out at those myriad of galaxies. Hey, that's our destiny. We, as part of the Supreme Being, are going to be. So they speculate, and I do too. I'll speculate with them. We're going to be part of that creation. What a gift! It makes sense. It makes sense why we start at the very bottom. It makes sense why we'd be given a thought adjuster, because we sure need a lot of help. It puts everything into perspective. Man, I'm 68 years old, and I thought when I was in my mid-30s, I had it pretty figured out. But we've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go. And the fact that we've been given this gift, the Urantia book, tells me that sometime in the future, most of the people on this planet are going to embrace this. We're going to live on a very different planet. This is, we are the, help me out here.
I think maybe you're looking, I like to think of us as the second wave of pioneers.
Second wave of pioneers. But as Urantia is known throughout the universe, we are known as it is the not the world of the cross. Well, the world of the
Yes,
cross.
the world.
Oh, the culture.
The world of the cross. Yes. So we're known. We're known. We are the sentimental shrine of Nebadon. Right? We are the sentimental shrine. There's something special about our planet because it was the nativity scene of our Creator Son. So there's kind of a special thing here for that reason. But the student visitors who come here all the time, I mean, this has got to be the most whacked out place that they've ever visited. I mean, this has got to be the most educational kind of place for them to come and for them to say, look, we need to do it this way, because if you don't, this is what you end up with. You don't want to end up with this. So, the Urantia book was, after all these years of reading it, it really just dawned on me what a gift we've been given here. And eventually the rest of the people, you know, will embrace it. I mean, when you go through and you read, you read the spiritual history of the planet. What history did we know before the Urantia book? We knew the history of wars on this planet. Now we have a spiritual history of this planet. It's very humbling because when you stop to consider how primitive we are in so many ways, go back and read about the primitive religion and just how many things we've carried through. We still knock on wood, right? 13 still, we cross our fingers, right? I mean, we do these weird things without thinking about it. That's very primitive. So we've carried forward with a lot of primitive stuff. Well, just like what happened with Christianity, where they embraced the atonement doctrine. I mean, it's just, so we still carry forward a lot of that primitive stuff, and the Urantia book just blew everything wide open. So and it's going to be a long, drawn out process. I really thought that when I found the Urantia book and I shared it with everybody else was going to go, yeah, this is great. It's, you know, I don't know how many Urantia books I've given away. I wonder how many of them would land. I know some of them ended up in the landfill. So, yeah, we got a long road ahead of us. But what a gift! What a gift! And it places each and every one of us in place to give. We've received so much, and you grow in wisdom as to how to give back. You know, you can over-reveal to people, and it just swamps them. So you've got to learn how to give it in pieces. And you know, it's too bad I'm 68 years old that I'm finally figuring all this stuff out of how to reach people. You know, don't dump a whole bunch of stuff on them you know they can't handle. You know, get to know them a little bit. Ask them some questions. So yeah, the gift of the Urantia book, really amazing, really amazing.
Thank you, David.
I had a new insight. I had an insight about the gift of the Urantia book. It just dawned on me a couple weeks ago. I was just meditating, thinking. Not only is the Urantia book a gift to us individually, but it dawned on me that this book may be the people who can accept it and who can make spiritual out of it. Is to prepare this world for the next divine son. So as David was saying, we got the whole thing from the bottom to the top. So I was thinking that perhaps with this kind of information, each generation goes on, that we begin to prepare the planet more and more for the next divine son, the magisterial son, or even Michael's return. So, and the other thing that dawned on me, which was really mind-blowing, was that, David, this should comfort you. That all those people that sort of like kind of turn you off or just put you away, those same people will be on the mansion board as you be teaching them.
Possibly, if we're that lucky. Doreen, did you have a comment?
Oh, yes, thank you. Cheryl, you know, I was thinking about, there's so many things, of course, to be grateful for and the gifts that we have received, but I love the idea of pattern and how God gave a divine part of himself to each of us to lay out how they're going to work in our lives. And when I look back, now that I'm old enough to look back far, and I could see the whole pattern of how he was able to get through to me and to totally transform my life. Like yourself, I came from an atheistic background, and I had never heard the word God or religion, never talked about it. But when you're starving inside, there is such a void, where do you turn? And a child that is, say, unhappy or doesn't have a loving relationship with family, there is somebody up there that has this whole plan in mind for you and for me. So what happened is, I remember getting the thought adjuster at 5 years and 10 months old. I remember the day that it came. I didn't know. I just needed to have a friend to talk to. And I made him up in my head, and I put him in the ceiling, and I said, well, I have to cry my heart out to somebody. But it was the greatest gift, because I had no idea if I made it up. And what happened over the years, I mean, everything was more. I established this fabulous relationship. I made a pact with God, and I said, if you are real, then this is what I need to survive with. And I gave him about 8 or 10 things. I received everything. I never looked at it after that. I just let it out there, and you have to go live your life. And all of a sudden, one day I looked back and I said, oh my goodness, you gave me everything. So it was father, mother, friend. He was everything to me. And I ended up thinking about the kindness, human kindness, and how we have no idea how people are suffering. And once you received this love inside of yourself, you could never treat anybody with indignity. It transforms your soul. You look at people with different eyes. You're there for them to share their lives with you. And when you do that, it makes you richer. That's the gift. You become a better human being because you have greater understanding. You could look at them and not look at the material. When you speak to their minds, you're really speaking to their souls, and they become the eyes of the windows of the soul. So what happens? You look into their eyes, and there is no insincerity. You have to be that deep and that depth that they speaking from. They understand. It's like the spirits are talking to one another, and there is no deception. There is no getting out of it. And all of a sudden you connect with another human being on a level that perhaps nobody has ever reached. And especially I find with men, it is very hard for them to open up, probably to other men. But I do have several that I deal with, and I do it on the phone, and there is, they are totally trusting and open because they can, let's say, regurgitate. They're carrying around so many burdens, and there's nobody to listen to them. And so if you give them kind of that attention and that level of understanding how God operates in all our lives, and through my own experiences, I could probably relate to most people because I went from, hell to heaven, let's put it that way. And when you understand that because you've experienced it, it just lifts you up. I mean, God just keeps filling me and filling me. And I could love differently. I did not know what love was. and the gift of having the friends that we met, the people that passed through our lives due to this wonderful revelation is extraordinary. National, international, wherever you go, there is another connection. The spirit it has that gravity force, that spirit gravity force that lures you in. It pulls you towards one another. Whether I meet people on the train or any place, I really mean at any place, it's like those angels are acting. Put them together with this one. Somebody has something to offer, but look for it. Forget yourself. What happens, you don't become self-conscious. It doesn't matter. When they said the universe is friendly, I saw everyone, as many as I could address, friendly. And they responded. And I found these are the gifts. I tell you, I can go on, but God is so absolutely absolute. The greatest thing of my life that has made my life truly worthwhile. And I'll stop there because I like to give other people an opportunity to speak. Thank you for allowing me this, Cheryl.
Thank you, Doreen. Again, I can cross a few things off of what I was going to say in the next part of my talk, because you guys have just grabbed them already and taken off, and this is wonderful. But is there anyone else before I go on? No? Okay.
I was going to say something, if I
Well,
could.
by all means.
One of the things I started noticing about gifts, besides all the things that were covered, is that on this planet with the seraphic government, there are gifts that are given to countries, there are gifts given to regions of people. There's also gifts given to individuals that, I don't know if you remember the saying, God helps those who help themselves. As we try to strive towards getting the gifts that of spirituality, that we also seems to have more interaction in terms of what we can receive, in terms of how we benefit from the angels that interact with us. You mentioned that already, but it seems like I see that more and more in my life, and I see that that if you tend to kind of step away from more of the materialism and that kind of direction, and go towards what's, just go with the flow, as I say. It seems like there's more gifts to the individuals. I mean, we've got seraphic guardians, we've got the cherubim, seraphim, we got all these interactions, and they interact in our lives to give us gifts, because it seems like the people that are higher spiritually tend to live better lives. It's more just not the quality of life. It's also the fact that I think somehow things just happen more than coincidentally in terms of receiving gifts. I think there is, and the Urantia book mentions this a few places, that they don't, the angels don't necessarily show you the way, but they kind of allow you to see it, and that provides gifts when you are able to find that path, and it balances out your life much better. And so I want to mention that there's this kind of a very interesting interaction I see with people that are spiritual and work towards that effort in terms of the material quality of their lives. And it just doesn't necessarily mean money; it means riches in terms of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual balance, and where you are, who you interact with, things like that. They end up turning out to be gifts that are different than just coincidence. And I just want to mention that.
Thank you, Pete, for mentioning that. I think I understand something about what you said, that spiritually minded people, I think it has to do with what they ask God for. They ask God for things that have spiritual value. And when you receive, because you always do, when you ask, you receive. And when you receive those things, it follows that you interact with other people who are of the same spiritual mind, that those things, the fact that you ask for those things and you receive them, that brings to you a better quality of life. At least that has been my experience. Has anyone else had that same experience? Dory? You're muted, Dory.
I did. I realized that. Thank you, Cheryl. Better quality, no, I was challenged more and more and more and more, but I knew that I can get through it because I wasn't alone. Tremendously challenged, but then also wonderful things. It was a balance between growth and being stagnant. And so, you know, that's where they know you and they know how to get through to you, that part of God, the thought adjuster, now thought controller, and I could see the difference at this point in my life. And the angels, oh my God, they're just so prevalent. They are there. I could feel their presence. They help me to survive. They warn me ahead of time. I'm telling you, it is such an extraordinary plan that God has given to this world or to all his creation. If I'd love to write about it one of these days, take the time and just really look at the pattern of your life and see how you were challenged. And if you weren't challenged, then you would have not been where you are today. So yeah, it's all of the above. It's everybody, of course, it has to be different, but they knew, you know, what to do for me. And I'm not there yet, but I'm really struggling, always trying to do better. And that's all I could do. As long as you're aware that you have never arrived, not yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you for pointing out challenges, because challenges, the backside of challenge is gift. And that's a very good point to make, because I tend to run away from challenges. They frighten me. I almost ran away from this challenge, but I decided to, quote unquote, step out of my comfort zone. And I'm very happy that I did, because otherwise I would not have had this marvelous chance to have this chat with all of you and receive all of your insights as well. And so each time I force myself to face the challenge, then there's another gift that comes with it. So it makes it a little easier, I hope. Maybe not, because I'm just reminded that each time you face whatever level challenge you have faced, then guess what? There's another one coming. So I think, unless there's any more comment, I'm going to go back to my outline here and pick it up again with the subject of...
I have a comment.
I have a comment too.
Jeannie, you tell me who's talking first.
It was David first, and after that, I didn't perceive.
Alfonso.
Alfonso.
Alonso.
Okay. Well, first David, after Alfonso. Thank you.
Okay. David?
Oh,
The act of living is ours. The consequence is God's.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, you know what? The fact that it is a friendly universe, I mean, if you just really embrace that's a big step forward. There's another little saying that I like. It's not in the Urantia book, and it goes like this: God doesn't steer a parked car. Look, just get out and do it. If you love people, look, you can't do what Jesus did. That's a big problem, okay? We're human beings. We're not creator's sons, but you can touch the souls of people. And I found over the years that I have found myself in the company of people that, well, oftentimes I didn't know who they were. It wasn't until long after I found out who they were, but you had a tremendous influence on many things. This has happened over and over again. But so just do what's right. Just love people. Just give them a little something. Just love people. It's the universe is friendly, and just go with it. And quit worrying so much about everything. Just quit worrying about stuff. Just put one foot in front of the other and just get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Alfonso?
Hi. First of all, I want to thank you for this conference. I've been enjoying it a lot, and I also want to say my my point of view on my personal experience. Is that I've been reading of the Urantia book for the last over 15 years, and I don't I don't remember whether if I have finished it or not. But for what I read, for me, it has been enough for to understand. I guess his message, and my experience is it's not always a material things. Go together with material things. There is always the time, words, attentions, favors. So anything that you can do for others, it's a gift. It's a given, and you can always experience it in your soul, when you're in the act of giving, you do it very sincere. And like I said, I always hear the phrase in the Urantia conferences or study group, how long you been reading the book? How long you been reading the book? And for me, that phrase is how many times have you put in practice what you have learned from the book? That's what for me means more than how many times I read the book or how long I've been reading the book. It's how many times you've been in the situation where you can practice what you have read in the book. And that's my personal opinion, because it seems like there's always opportunity for me to express or do something for others, regardless, and it doesn't have to necessarily be religious or talking about God, about the book. It's just being there for someone, have a word for someone, put a shoulder on for someone to lean on. And, that's practicing, as Jesus was passing by, he was doing good to everybody. He was doing good, period, and probably we've been given this gift of revelation to be the conductors, to carry on what's there in the book. So that's my personal experience, and I thank you all for being there and giving your opinions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Alfonso. I think, to put it another way, I don't know if it's in the Urantia book or if I just heard some reader or something at a conference. Our challenge is to live the teachings in the Urantia book, to be the light for the rest of the world, to show the way. And so you put that very well. So don't tell me how many times you've read the book or how many years you've been doing it. As a Missouri person would say, show me.
Yeah, maybe what I have read has already, I'm taking my time to enjoy what I'm, and put it in other words, is feeding my soul with, digesting what I'm eating, what I'm picking up from the book. And like I said, I don't understand many concepts of the book yet, but maybe people don't want to hear about the universal Father, the Trinity. I don't know. I just always have simple words for everybody, So, I'm not that intellectual, I barely finished high school, but I discovered the Urantia book through the J.J. Benitez Trojan Horse books, and I've been a student ever since then. For the last 15 years. But like I said, the gospel of Jesus is a living gospel. The spiritual truth is something that is alive. That we always have to recognize His presence and carry it on with us. And that has been my experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alfonso, for you to tackle that book with less than a high school education. That shows courage and perseverance beyond belief. Good for you.
Thank you.
For you. And David, you know what is going to be my watchword from now on when I'm challenged and I'm afraid? You know what I'm going to hear in my head? Take it out of park. It's going to be take it out of park, Cheryl.
Good for you.
Thank you. Well then, if I may, I'm going to go to the second part here, and it was a list of the types of giving. So first of all is the gift of yourself. This is a spiritual gift that you bestow upon another being. When you give your smile, what happens? What happens when you give your smile? Well, obviously, what you hope happens is that whoever you're giving that smile to gives you one back. And if they give you one back, what's the blessing? What's the blessing behind that gift of your smile? In my opinion, the blessing there is that you caused another human being to want to smile. And if they wanted to smile, that's an upliftment, even if it's just a little tiny bit. It's taking their mind off whatever they weren't smiling for. And so I have this tendency to make eye contact with random humanity wherever I am, and to smile at complete strangers for no particular reason. And I remember doing that a long time ago. I was very young, and my father was dying, and I was on an airplane traveling from Michigan back to my hometown to be with my family and my father. And I was on the airplane, and there was a gentleman sitting, I forget exactly where we were seated, but I was able to make eye contact with him. And I smiled at him, and he smiled back. And then a little while later, I forget why, I looked up and I made eye contact again. So I smiled at him again. And this kind of went on for, I think it was an hour and a half flight. So I smiled at this guy several times. Well, this kind of backfired on me. As we're getting off the plane, the guy asks me if I'd like to meet up with him for a drink later. And I was totally stunned and shocked. Again, you must remember, I was very young. And I said, I'm afraid I won't be able to. My father's dying and I'm going to be with my family. And you should have seen the look on this guy's face. He was so embarrassed that he had completely misunderstood my contact with him. He apologized all over the place and beat a hasty retreat. But I will never forget that you sometimes can convey the wrong impression. You have to be a little careful sometimes, or you have to understand that not everyone is going to accept what you're giving at the level that you're giving it. So that's just a little joke on me there. So what happens when you give your time to someone, or to an organization, or to an endeavor? What happens when you give your time? Well, you're taking your time away from something else, in order to give it to whatever you've chosen to give it to. And so maybe there's a little feeling of lack in one area, like you haven't done what you should have done over in this area of your life because you've chosen to give it somewhere else. But in doing that, what's the blessing? What's the blessing behind the giving of your time? What happens? Do you create something because you gave your time to whatever it is you gave it to? Does that make whatever you gave it to a better thing, or does it make other people's lives better because you did that, or does it give understanding, or I don't know. That's still a question I don't really have an answer to. I guess I'll have to wait a little while to figure out the depth of the blessing to me, because I'm giving my time here to all of you, which, by the way, I'm enjoying very much. I hope you are. And there's also the gift of your attention, which kind of goes along with your time. Sometimes when you put your attention on something, it isn't that thing that receives the gift, but you do. Sometimes there's something going on in the background that you're not looking at, but if somebody turns your attention to it, it's something wonderful. You get a surprise, or you get an understanding, or you get an opportunity because your attention was turned to something you didn't know about. So sometimes those blessings are hidden. And unless you look, unless you turn your attention, you're going to miss them. And, oh, here's one I just love. Now that I'm 66 years old and I have all this gray hair, people actually are kind of interested in what I have to say. Younger people are kind of interested in what I have to say. So when you give your wisdom and you see the reaction, and here again, this is payoff. I'm still stuck in this payoff thing. But that's my payoff. When I give a piece of wisdom and someone understands it, or they use it to make their lives better, or it prevents them from making a huge mistake, then that's a blessing to me, for my wisdom, for all the pain and suffering that I went through to gain that wisdom. Then I get the blessing to maybe prevent somebody else from having to go through the pain and the suffering. Here's another one. There's the gift of energy. So we're taught in the Urantia book, I think it's in the Urantia book, about work and how important it is to labor. And it is not so much what you get materially from your labor, but what you become by laboring, what happens to you because you have worked. That's an interesting one. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say about work. There's also service. What happens when you serve? Because that is the greatest blessing and the greatest privilege is to serve our fellow man. What else can we do here that's really going to make a difference? And I love what Mother Teresa said. She had this little saying that I like to say to myself. She says, I can do no great things. I can do only small things with great love. I like to remind myself of that when I think, what am I doing? You know, this is a little thing that I'm doing. It's a little thing. Yeah, well, that's okay. Little things with great love are very, very important. So don't forget that. I don't think any of you will forget that, but I have to remind myself all the time. What happens when you pray? Prayer is a gift. Thank you, Jeannie, for reminding me how to pray the other day. I was all nervous about this presentation. I was really getting nervous. It's a stage fright, if you will. And Jeannie sent me a little email outlining what she does every day. Takes her 10 minutes or so. And I thought, well, why not? I'll give that a shot. And so it was only a couple days ago that she sent that to me, and I took her advice and I did it. And immediately, after the very first time, immediately, I got all calmed down and all settled and okay, you're nervous, that's all right, it's gonna be fine. That was a real gift. So where's the blessing in prayer? Prayer is a blessing you give yourself. I think maybe God likes it when you pray too, but I think it's a blessing you give yourself. And my husband's contribution to my list. He says to me, I have one thing you don't have on your list. I said, oh yeah, what's that? He said, a kind word. And that just stopped me in my tracks. So often, one little thing you say to somebody, if it's a kindness, can turn their whole day around. Makes a huge impact. And he was so right. And I can't tell you how often he has a kind word for me. And so what's the blessing of the kind word? It's love, the desire to do good to others. That's love. That's our definition of love, right? So if you say a kind word to someone, that's a desire to do good to them. And so you are expressing the Father's love. And for what other purpose are we here? Okay, I've come to the end of my list and my outline. And again, if you have things to share or questions to ask or commentary or critique for my presentation, please, in case I'm ever asked to do something like this again. Anyone?
I think that you're talking about the blessing from work. That's the blessing from work.
Yes,
What is the
James.
blessing from work? Well, I think that we have this new concept that was given to us. You mentioned about the supreme being. Is that as we work and labor and produce, we also help him to come in existence. So that becomes an increasing status when we keep working and working and working. We also increase our status, because the work is important. Work's important itself. I think in the Urantia book, in the Mansion Worlds, they talk about how the work of the stratosphere is very, very important. But it's really not the work that exhausts, mature creatures, but it's the self element that exhausts.
Yeah.
That you work doing creative things, you're moving things forward, even though it may be a very small thing that you're doing. That fact you're moving the thing forward. And as time goes on, thousands of years from now, whenever Supreme will actually come to being because of our efforts, creature and creator working to bring the Supreme Being into place. The other thing you talked about was about service. You should realize that in serving each other, you're also serving God. That becomes a really important thing there. Serving each other and serving God. So and the other thing is that when we really have, this is what I found out to be true. The greater the need that you help someone feel, the greater the joy you experience. That's this huge differential. So if you help somebody who's really, really in need, the joy that you feel is almost immeasurable. So that's very important. That's incentive for us to reach down and help somebody who really, really needs the help. I mean, it's easy to help somebody who don't need your help. It's easy to love someone who don't need your love. But to reach down to that unlovable person and bestow love upon them, that's the really thing that really, really should keep in mind.
Oh, so that's why Jesus came down here for his seventh bestowal.
That's part of the reason he came down here, part of it. But I think the important thing to remember is that all this stuff that we're just talking about is basically a dedication and consecration to doing God's will. That's what it's really all about. Is that once we make that decision, and we bring all this other stuff into play, we get the stimulus. Remember, Jesus said the will is not to be considered an enemy, but it's a dispensation working alongside the men to help them, to bless them, and move them forward. And of course, there's that famous quote that a lot of people have trouble with. That is that greatest affliction in the universe, in the cosmos.
Is never to have been afflicted. Another of my favorite quotes. Thank you, James.
It takes a while to kind of put your head around that one, you know.
Oh yeah.
Because like you indicated, that you get a chance to show your wisdom to some people at the time and to prevent them from going through all that suffering and stuff like that. So the thing is that we only learn wisdom through trials and tribulation and suffering. That's how we learn.
Thank you, James. Noreen?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Cheryl. I was thinking, you know, when I'm out there on the street or traveling someplace, I always look for something to do for someone. It's just keep your eye out. There's so many things, from small things to large things. But one day I'm sitting on the train and there was a young Black man sitting across from me, and he had a little child, about a 2-year-old boy, in his arms. And he was playing with him and loving him so much. I watched the whole trip how this man interacted with his son. And it was unusual during the day. Usually you see women. I had to tell him before he got off the train, I said, "Excuse me, I just need to tell you what a wonderful father you are, and that your son just absolutely adores you, and that he will never forget this relationship between you and him." And I said, "I envy you that you can do this." And he was so stunned and he was so happy I said this. And it's like wherever you meet people, say something that you see that's wonderful. And I was on a plane one time, and there was this woman. She was a basketball coach from Rutgers University. And I was going to Chicago, and she said, "I'm going to recruit 5 people for my team." And she asked me if I was married, and I said yes, and had children. But she says, "Well, I don't have any children." And I said to her, "Are you kidding me? You have 15 girls for 4 years that you're a surrogate mother to. You teach them teamwork. You teach them how to get along. You teach them how to lose, how to win, what to do." I said, "It's amazing. You don't." Well, the time, you know, I got finished, she was so happy. She said, "Oh, you're right." I said, "You have more influence in these girls' lives than their own parents. And I bet they come back once they're out of school and come back and thank you." And she thought about it and she says, "Yeah, they do." And I said, "See, and you thought you didn't have any kids. What a wonderful opportunity you have. I only have 2, and look all you have." And so, you know, there's always something in life that you could find to look and say a kind word to people. And they appreciate it so. And you're right with the smile. Honestly, they smile back. They're so happy you engage them, because I think people are shy and they're introverted and they don't initiate doing that. But I'm not self-conscious, and I really don't care. You know, it's like if I'm looking through God's eyes, he sees all of us as his children. I have to try to do the same thing, and it works. So don't ever give up on anyone. It really, really works. Be kind as much as you can. Go look for something to do that's good. I tell you, it's just such a reward. I am really grateful to God for that.
Thank you, Doreen.
I want to ask Flo a question.
Flor?
Well, when did you realize that you comprehended the divine plan for your life?
Are you asking me, James, or Flor?
Flo, yeah, Flor.
Flor, okay.
Yeah. Did you hear the question?
I don't know. Flor, you're muted, dear. There we go.
What was your question, James?
The question was, when did you realize that you understood and comprehended the divine plan for your life?
When did I realize what? I'm sorry, I can't hear you well.
It's not for you. It's for Doreen. It's for Doreen. The question was
Oh,
for
it's for Doreen. Oh, I'm sorry. You said
Oh, the
4.
ring. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question is, when did I realize the divine in my life? Is that what you asked me?
When did you realize that you understood and comprehended the divine plan for your life?
Little by little. You know, it is stage by stage, the growth. It didn't all come at once, not at all. But I was reading Descartes, you know, the philosopher, because somebody asked me to teach a course on God, which I said, I don't know. I never had religion, but I only know my relationship. And they said, do it anyway. So I took out all these books, and when I started to read Descartes, and I have to meditate when I read something, I have to process it. It's not just up here, it has to be in my heart. And all of a sudden, there was this scroll in my mind's eye as I'm meditating, and it was in French. And I don't know French, and I thought, what? What is this? And I wrote down as soon as, you know, I could remember most of the words, and I brought it to work. And I said, does anyone understand French? And some customer said yes. And they translated, and it said, you will be born again. And then I found the Urantia book the next week.
Oh,
And I suppose that was the rebirth. You know, the other is just, you know, you just go along on the material level, not really knowing. But then I did know. I had a very deep relationship, you know. My inner world was much more powerful than the outer world. So it was, I guess, maybe inevitable.
Do you have any philosophical thoughts on what triggers realization, spiritual realization?
Well, meditation did it for me. I meditated for about 40 years now. And when I first started, I couldn't, it didn't happen for me because I was trying to follow everything I read, you know, the mantras, the music, well, the chanting, nothing worked. So I just lay down and I said, God, tell me about yourself. And then all of a sudden, my inner eye opened up, and there was this beautiful woman with a dot in the middle of her head, and she smiled and it was gone. But that was the beginning of the eye, you know, the inner opening up of the other world, of the inner world. And that was wonderful. So, and then I just kept, you know, that pace, always every day, meditating, talking to God. And little by little, you know, you progress. It gets deeper and better. But it's really the sincere desire to love God and to know him. And you know that. Each of us finds it different. Some in nature. I found it my way. And it's been a blessing. It has really saved my life, because I was suicidal at one point. I really had no reason to live. I didn't know, you know, what I know now. So, but they knew. And that's why I always said, they know exactly what you need. Just be aware of it. And that's all. Pay attention. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you more than answered it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
is there anyone else? David?
Yeah, you had said something earlier about work, right?
Yes. Mhm.
You would ask the question, does anyone have any insights about, you know, your work? Well, the thing that leads you Godward isn't your emotions or your feelings, it's your thoughts. So there's no reason why you can't move paradiseward in anything that you do and in everything that you do, including work.
Mhm.
I mean, read the section in the Urantia book about the 12 different divisions of angels that minister, the seraphim that minister on this planet. I mean, there's a whole group of them that are, this may not sound very good, but political. The Most High's rule in the kingdoms of men, right? Education, just every type of mode of living that you can imagine. There are angels devoted They're angels of the churches, angels of the, do you know the section I'm talking about?
I
Well,
don't know it well, but I know that there's a section about it.
yes, yes. Anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, growing up, I thought if you had to devote yourself to God, you had to become a priest or minister or something like that. Nothing could be further from the truth. You go work and just do the most mundane of whatever. It doesn't matter. It's your thoughts that lead you Godward. And it's a, Dorian, I'm sure you understand that, you know, you meditate a lot. There's a certain spiritual reception that you get when you worship. You call it meditating, we'll call it worship, prayer leading to worship. That's one spiritual influence, but we have a number of spiritual influences, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth and whatnot. Those follow you around. Let's not forget the cosmic mind. I mean, our brains function on a spiritual influence. Now, all animals do too. I mean, we have worship and wisdom out of that. So the point is that we don't have to feel separated from God just because we go to work and do something mundane or whatever. There's a spiritual thrill to doing all of that. And it's your thoughts, it's your decisions. What is it that leads you Godward? Sincerity, sincerity, and more sincerity. And it's the quality of your thoughts. If you're thinking something dumb, go, that's dumb, let's fix that, you know? Yeah. I feel like I'm hogging too much of the comment thing here. I'm going to mute myself now.
Thank you for your contributions, David. They've been wonderful. Wonderful. I agree that any kind of work in which you engage can have a spiritual force behind it. It is the reason why you do whatever you do. Even in my job, when I worked in my job, and believe me, it wasn't very spiritual work. It was during the economic meltdown in the US when people were losing jobs left and right, and consequently they were also losing the ability to pay their mortgages. And it was my job to process mortgage foreclosures and to send the sheriffs out to people's homes to evict them. And that was very difficult work for me to do. So I had to take a different attitude about the work. I had to keep reminding myself that this work was going to be done by somebody, no matter what. And if I could do it with as much kindness and gentleness and reason when dealing with the debtors themselves, when dealing with the people whose jobs it was to remove them from their homes, the attitude I took, the patience I had, and the recognition that this was the way in which I was supporting my family, and that was necessary for me to do, and it was what I was qualified to do at that time. Again, it was still very, very hard, but that's the way I managed to get through it. Now that I've been retired for quite some time, the work that I do at home is very much in a homemaker, housewife genre. And everything that I do, from baking muffins to cleaning bathrooms to grocery shopping, it's all work, it's all honorable and necessary. And personally, at least in this country, I think homemaking gets a very bad rap, and it deserves a lot more honor than it gets. That's my humble opinion on that kind of work. Well, thank you, Jean.
I'd like to share something similar with you that I had a similar experience, and it's a very agonizing experience. I spent 5 years working in the federal prison.
Oh.
This was at the time that I was really trying to comprehend the spiritual aspect of life. And you know, part of me really wanted to try to show some empathy first to the people that the inmates there. It was a real struggle to try to harmonize those two. And it just was horrible. I thought about just resigning altogether at one point in time. But I finally realized that you have to understand, or I had to understand that I had to separate. I had to run into Caesar, the things of the Caesar, the God, the things of the God, so that the material aspect of our life goes according to the ethics that we have developed, the laws that we have developed. That's the material aspect. But the important point is the quality or the attitude that we have carrying out these duties. That's the spiritual aspect of it. So in dealing in a corporate situation, as long as you remain impersonal, non-personal, the duties you do, then you don't have to worry about the structure of your personality. But when you begin to make personal decisions about the work you're doing, that begins to destroy you. So that is how that people work in these very, very hard positions, executions, for example. Whose job is to execute condemned criminals. How do they maintain their spiritual integrity and have to carry out this work? Or soldiers involved in combat, war. How do they separate the two? Well, the thing is, as long as you don't make it personal, there's no danger to your soul. You're carrying out a material function. But the spiritual aspect of it is your attitude towards it. So it took me a hard time to get through that, but I eventually got through it so that I understand now that the material is the material, the spiritual is the spiritual.
Thank you, James. I wish I'd had a discussion with you while I was still working.
Hello.
Yes. Alfonso, go
Can I
ahead.
say something?
Absolutely.
I'm just, I noticed how many similarities is among us, I just was listening to this lady about her experience, and I can relate to her when she's always trying to admire or to notice something good in others, like she saw that father playing with his son, and she approached him and let him know that there was something he was doing something good. I had the same experience. Flying in the aircraft at my flights. I noticed that one of the flight attendant was very I don't know, very into his job. And before I abandoned I get off the plane. I went to him and said, hey, I admire the way you conduct yourself while doing your job. And he says, oh, well, thanks a lot, and things like that. See on them, and at work, I worked with this company for 30 years as a forklift driver, and at the very end of my be there working, I understood. I learned to love what I what I was doing, and that makes me my job more easier, because I liked what I was doing. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I understood many things, and I was able to conduct myself, in my job, and I learned something from this basketball coach. I don't know what's his name, John Goodman. I don't remember. I'm not too good about remembering names, but I always kept that in mind. He said, you work, you do what you expect to do. You work according to your expectations. You're not there to please anybody but yourself. As long as you're happy with what you do, just do it, And that was something I enjoyed, I learned that from another source, There's always something you can do for others, And that's the way I understood about doing my job. I've been retired for the last 2 years, and I'm just here chilling at home. But like I noticed that we all have something similar, about what we do in our life, how to react to situations, how to react to conduct ourselves with others. And I like that. Because I noticed even what she mentioned about suicidal thoughts. I went through that too. And I always, and myself, I was a atheist for a long time until I found the Urantia book, you know, because what I knew about God and religion didn't please me enough. So I guess someone in the universe noticed that and guided me to the Urantia book. That's one of the experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. Yeah, I noticed the same thing when I hear other Urantia book readers tell about their lives and their journeys. We have, all of us, so many similarities. It must be those things which have qualified us to receive this gift, to be the ones to know and to want to serve and to bring more light. Because we only have one short life here, you know, 90, 100 years maybe, if we're lucky. And some of us received the Urantia book when we were young, and some when we were in our middle years, and some maybe quite a bit later. So the actual space-time frame in which we have to work with what we've learned is different for all of us. But I personally think that the minute they can check this box and this box and this box, okay, this individual has experienced all these things and now they're ready. Now they're ready and they've expressed a willingness. And so time for the Urantia book to come into that one's life, and we'll see what they do with it. And please.
If I may, I would like to, what's his name, the guy who just finished speaking?
I think it's Alfonso.
Alfonso? What I'd like to do, if I may, is give you,
Excuse me?
what I'd like to do, Alfonso, is give you a 1 minute talk on understanding the triunity. The triunity. Just give you a 1 minute talk so you can understand. It is difficult, but this will kind of give you a concept for it. Say, for example, you have 15 different corporations. All right. Now you could hire somebody to head each one of those corporations. But the most effective way of you dealing with those corporations, if you could be in all of them yourself. So that's the basic concept of the triunity. It's the way the 7 absolutes of infinity. The Father uses different combinations, so he's a member of each one of those. It's through this that he's able to control all the wheels of infinity. So that's basically in a nutshell.
Okay. I thank you for that explanation.
So James, if I might ask you, is that sort of like, so God's sitting as a board member of the board of directors on every single one of those corporations?
Exactly. That's how he controls all of them.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything more to add at all? Well, if not, then I want to thank you all once again for giving me the gift of your time and your energy and your attention and your smiles and your input and your ideas and all those things that I get to take away from this experience, like take it out of park, Cheryl. That's going to be my watchword, David. So Jeannie, I think we're maybe at the end here.
Yes, I want to thank you, Cheryl. This was one of the most beautiful sessions we have had until now. It was full of love, wisdom. I perceived a kind of experiential wisdom born of your search for truth, your search for God and service. So this is a gift. Thank you very much, and thank you all. I have enjoyed your participations. I feel so identified with your experiences and your ideas and your insights about this amazing gift of sharing our fraternity, our mutual love I think this is something that will help people in the future.